When you're on the National Register of Historic Houses and Gardens, you know there has to be a rich history and abounding beauty. We are in Fountain City, outskirt of Knoxville, Tennessee, and I'm about to take you through the gates to see this amazing property. This beautiful garden was begun in 1917. Arthur Savage was an immigrant from England. He is responsible for 3 gardens that were built in this area. When Arthur and Hortense moved in, there were no trees, just a sinkhole and a pig pen. And within just 1 year, he had made elaborate flower beds and had planted many trees. Then came ponds, water towers, larger ponds, and that pagoda. Arthur had quite the vision and the passion. Today we're in a garden that Bill Dorm and Patty Cooper own, and we're about to be led through beautiful plants and pathways and a wonderful tour led by Bill.
Welcome to the garden.
Thank you.
We've owned the garden since 1986, Patty Cooper and myself, and we're approaching some trees.
And very mature shrubs and all types of things in here, but you said tree.
Yeah, a Chinese pistache planted by Arthur. It's a state champion.
Wow.
It has very pretty orange leaves.
I must say, you've done a great job at nurturing specimens that were here, and you've added so many new varieties. I understand you had historic photographs from the garden's grandest time in the late 1920s to guide you. And you and Patty have repaired or recreated so much of the structural features. You know, Bill, this reminds me of a movie scene. I feel like I'm walking down through time. Tell me about the pergola and what the rebuild.
Well, these were rebuilt based on a photograph we had of the arbors. We're very lucky to have photos from the family, and we're approaching the pagoda, which we'll see in a moment, but right now we have some hydrangeas, which are blooming, and bananas that are growing, starting their season.
And that, I have to point out, is incredible.
They are incredibles.
And those bananas stay there year-round?
They are year-round. They're a hardy banana that we got from UT Gardens.
Bill, I want to tell you that I appreciate so much what you and Patty have done here. It's not often when someone purchases a property, they want to go back and restore it to the original intent. And you have done that. Along with it, you're having to do some repairs, but you've gone back to the foundation and the footings.
We're wanting to have a layer with lower ferns, the hydrangeas, the arborvitaes behind that to separate the pond area from the rest of the garden.
Right, and you know, I know that because you told me previously that we're actually walking in what was a goldfish pond.
This was a goldfish pond.
Yes, and you know, you've appointed it well with wonderful containers and made it interesting. I really do like the different surface colors, the textures, the varying heights. You've got vertical lines going. I mean, and who could escape that beautiful rock wall back there, the original owner and his eye. In reading about this garden's history, it was in 1930 that a series of misfortunes occurred that caused this garden to decline. The Great Depression came, so Arthur could no longer employ his full-time gardener, Charlie Davis. Then in 1937, a tornado came and took out 19 trees and did a lot of damage to the rock foundation and caused leaks in the pond. Finally, Arthur passed away in 1946, leaving no one to devote the same time and attention to the gardens. And we're approaching another structure that you have taken care of reconstructing.
Well, this is the pagoda. It was built in 1926. There's a cistern inside, there's a pond surrounding the pagoda, and we have, this is probably the predominant feature in the entire garden.
Right, and it's seen from the streets, actually, too. So it was in pretty bad repair?
It was in very bad repair. It was collapsing, these outriggers were collapsing at the time. We had to repair that.
Bill, this is sort of like a little fairyland down here, and the usage of some rock over here that you've made benches out of. You said those were stepping stones?
Those are originally stepping stones. We're in the pond area, and we have a couple of lanterns that are original to the garden.
Those are beautiful, and they have age on them, and they just get better, don't they? And what the height of them is good too. And then, well, rock is one of my favorite subjects, and my eye was led to this camel over here.
Right, it does look like a camel.
Doesn't that look like a camel?
Can imagine that.
And I'm interested too in talking about the way they made their concrete, and where do you think that all of these rock came from?
One of the stories is the family on Sunday afternoons would go drive to the Smoky Mountains Park before it was a national park and bring back a trunk load of rocks. We have lots of hens and chicks in the rock work.
That. And those come back every year, don't they?
They come back every year.
Yeah, and then that
Euphorbia?
Euphorbia, that's right. Goodness.
The hens and chicks like a hot, dry place like that.
Yes. Well, let's talk about hot. Let's go to the shade.
Sure.
Bill, looking out over that hillside landscape, it's a botanical wonderland with the colors and the shading and the textures. It's just magnificent. You know, Bill, the location that we have to deal with in this site, it's well sited for gardens because you're in the southern exposure, but it's also on a hillside. And with this slope, you're allowed to see things. Had it been on flat ground, you would never know they were there, would you?
It's much more interesting on a slope.
Absolutely. It does create that depth that many people can't achieve without this. Well, some of the plants that you have located in here, for instance, that beautiful coral bark maple. And I know in the fall, when it turns and the sun is late afternoon, that is breathtaking. Is there another favorite plant that you have in here?
Well, the large tree here is a China fir, and it's probably 100 years old. And we also have this line of boxwoods.
Yeah, those look really. Is that that must be the sky pencil? Those are I love those in the verticalness. But you know, being on a hillside, it creates an issue, doesn't it?
Well, they added a stream. There's a little stream that comes down to the pond.
A watershed, yeah. And if there are torrential rains, I'm sure it fills up and runs, doesn't it?
It does.
Yes. Well, let's move on. But first of all, this arch over here.
That arch has been the site of several weddings over the years.
And that's original?
That was original.
Wow. And what do you call that little thing at the top?
Keystone.
Keystone.
I would call it a keystone. Yep.
Yes, that's just beautiful. And look how that's sited so that when you look through it, that beautiful structure back there.
Arthur had a terrific design for the overall shape of the garden.
That's a metal structure, isn't it?
That is a plant support there with clematis growing on it.
Wow.
Beyond the arch.
You know, if you just took that one little segment right there, there's a garden. So many gardens within the big garden.
Right.
Yes. Well, let's travel on.
Okay.
Bill, we've kind of reached the top of this beautiful hillside, and this wonderful display of this wonderful hydrangea lady in red. And you know, I was just standing here waiting and thinking about how beautiful it is that these are deciduous, and then all of this lower foliage goes away in the fall and this turns pretty, but then you're exposed to all the wonderful evergreens, the needled evergreens, everything. It's just a wonderful background for everything, isn't it? Yeah, and then knowing that this was a home property and they had to have water, this is one of their water towers.
They have 2 water towers here. This was built about 1919, and they had a system of irrigation from here down to the house and the pond in the front.
Wow, gravity took it down, didn't it? Wow. That is amazing ingenuity and engineering, isn't it? Do you think he did all that himself?
I would love to know how he came up with the design. And
it's fascinating just to think about, and at such an early time, But you know, they say nothing's new under the sun. Wow.
Well, this was part of the, this was country back then. This was really not in the city.
And we're sort of in the foothills, aren't we?
Yep.
To the mountains.
These are 3 ponds that were built, started in 1919 by the Charlie Davis that worked for Arthur Savage. Next to the water tower, which we looked at just a moment ago. And these quickly developed cracks, and after they developed cracks, Arthur began the project in the front of the garden, the larger pond with the pagoda we looked at earlier.
And it's interesting the stops that they put in there, didn't they? What do you think?
I think those were planters inside. They had planters inside of each of the 3 ponds.
Right, like in the goldfish pond.
Right.
Well, and you know, I think it does. That has something to do with water flow too. You think?
Well, it made it more interesting to have plants in the water.
It's amazing to be up here on top of the world.
Yeah.
Of note is that there are 150 youth who attend Garden Montessori School just next door to this, and Bill, you and Patty founded that in 1994. These students use this private garden as part of the curriculum, learning about nature. Wow, Bill, I feel like I'm going into a very special place.
Well, this is the greenhouse. It was built by the Savages in 1926, the front corner of the house.
Wow, and you know, a person with garden interest, what a way to begin all of that. And I understand that there are plants that go back to them.
We were lucky. There was a jade plant that was left here by the Savage family, and some begonias, a few other plants that the family left.
And you know, that's the great thing about plants. When we can pass them out, there's nothing that can take away from the charm of saying, well, this came from Mr. Savage's garden.
It's very special.
There's just nothing can replace that. Well, that's the connection that plants people have, isn't it?
Right.
Wow.
So we've been lucky over the years to have the help of Eric Fordenberry, Trumi Watson, William Greider, my son Jacob, Eric's nephew Jackson, and it's because of a effort of a lot of people that the garden has gotten to the condition and the shape that it's in.
Well, I commend them and you, Bill and Patty, for the painstaking work you've done to restore and rejuvenate this historic treasure. Arthur would be proud.
For inspiring garden tours, growing tips, and garden projects, visit our website at volunteergardener.org or on YouTube at the Volunteer Gardener channel, and like us on Facebook.